So I thought before we start, I'd actually show you some of my report cards from St. Nicholas, and this is way back in the olden days in 1985. So I was quite a weird student, and I was also a little bit of a rebel. One thing that I actually really hated was Chinese class. And I had this, yeah, I see a lot of you like, amen. Yeah, no. I actually really hated Chinese class. And back then in those days, my Chinese teacher was a lady called Chen Fengying. She was in St. Nick's and she had a big bun on her head. She always wore a cheongsam. And one day she said to me, because I didn't draw my margin on my report, in my 听写簿 properly, so she actually threw it back at me. And she said to me these words that I have been dying to hear my whole schooling life. She said, 你不要学，你给我滚. You know what this means? You don't want to study, you get out of here. Oh man, this is the best news I heard in a long time because I really didn't want to study Chinese, man. So I packed up everything. I packed up my scissors, my pencil, my ruler, everything. I put all my stuff in my school bag, and Miss Chen Fengying with her bulging eyes was staring at me. I packed my bag and I got out of there. I made it as far as the overhead bridge. In those days there was an overhead bridge there. And suddenly, as I was about to go to the main road to the bus stop, I heard this clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop behind me. And I turned around, and there was Chen Fengying Laoshi. She was clinging onto her beehive bun in one hand, and she was running like this. And she said, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, what is wrong with you?" You told me that if I didn't want to learn, I could get out of here, so I'm getting out of here. Which is like, I didn't actually think that you would do it. So, you know, of course my mother got called to school and it was very embarrassing, and my mom used to have this pair of black Versace glasses with big Medusa heads that she used to wear because she would always be crying at these principal, meetings. She was such a naughty girl. And let me show you another specimen of my report card. Okay, so over here we have my 1988 report card. As you can see, this is my primary 3 purity, which my dad always laughed at. Purity, so funny. Right. So anyway, over here, what you may not be able to see properly, I've circled in 2 red circles. This is my Chinese marks, okay? It looks like 70 and a half and 77. But if you look really carefully, there's like this white kind of rubbing in the background. That's because I had this bright idea, actually done really badly in my Mandarin test. So I decided to sandpaper off the real mark and actually write over a fake mark, thinking that my parents wouldn't notice. Of course, not very smart lah. I mean, look, the background is blue color of your report card, so when you sandpaper it off, it becomes white color. So of course, I gana lah from my mom. So, moral of the story, don't try to get away with cheating. It never ever works out, right? But another way in which I was a rebel. And then lastly, I have this wonderful certificate of general knowledge competition. I actually got first prize. And I will never forget it's funny now that I'm 38 years old, I still remember the question that won me the first prize for general knowledge. And the question was, it was a crossword puzzle, and the answer for the missing word was nana, which means wild grass, right? And it was really interesting because now upon reflection, I always felt like nana. I always felt like a weed, like other students were kind of like very nicely manicured and very prim and proper, and there I was like, this sort of tomboy running around breaking all the rules. But the interesting thing is that in my career, nothing that I've ever done in my 7 careers, I have 7 careers by the way, so I've been a banker, I've been a broker, I've been a headhunter, I've been a vineyard owner, I've been an entrepreneur, I've been an educator. I have never received any formal hard skills training in any of these jobs. I was a law student, but I became a banker. How? Because I was curious Actually, there's a story about this. I was stealing sausages in my university in the in the UK. So I saw that there was a room, and in this room there were all these tables of sausage rolls. So I was very hungry. I decided to sneak in and steal some sausage rolls. So I was stuffing my pockets, literally. I was in a bathroom. And then I heard the lights go on, and this banker from behind me said, "Excuse me, what are you doing here? This is a recruitment talk for business school students." And I knew, oh no. So I had to make up something on the spot. And after telling this kind of story, the banker looked at me and said, I don't believe a word of what you said, but you're really good at telling stories. So how would you like to be an investment banker? And I said, what? He said, yeah, banking is about telling stories. It's about selling a story. So I said, I have a law degree, I know nuts about banking and finance and maths. And he said, don't worry. And the thing was that why did I take up that job? Why did I go for that opportunity? Because none of the hard skills, I didn't have any hard skills, but I had mindsets. I had a mindset of curiosity, I had a mindset of resilience, I had confidence in myself, and I was willing to try different things. So that's actually what I'm going to talk about today in my presentation. I'm not going to talk about hard skills. Hard skills are the technical skills. You understand what I mean by hard skills, right? The things like coding or maths or so forth, right? Because to me, those are like the apps. Those are like the apps on your smartphone. And in the world of the future, we don't know which apps are going to be the ones that you need. In fact, nobody knows. The World Economic Forum had this huge report called The Future of Jobs. And like everybody said that they didn't know what the skills of the future were going to be. What's much more important than your apps is your operating system. How can you actually upgrade your own internal OS so that in the future, whatever apps you want to install, you have enough bandwidth, you can actually run them more efficiently, right? So let's talk about this quote now. Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric. And what he said was, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. And the sense I take away of that is that, it's in today's world where the external change, just like Fiona was saying, the principal was saying, everything is changing on the outside so fast. The real question for all of you is how are you going to upgrade and change your internal operating system, your behaviors, your mindsets, your beliefs, your skills in a way. How are you actually going to upgrade the inside so that you can keep pace with the outsides? Because if you don't, that's when things get a bit hairy. You all be living till 115 years old. Okay, I don't know why half of you look so happy, half of you look so sad, But your life's going to be long, okay? It's going to be much longer than my life. So if you're going to be living till 115 years, wouldn't it be good to be spending your life doing stuff that's actually fun and meaningful to you, right? So it means that all of you guys are going to be working for 60 to 70 years. And during my time, actually, our generation was only expecting to work for like 4 decades, but your generation is going to be working for a lot longer. So it's never been more important to think about meaningful work and preparing yourself for the future of jobs. So how do you make life and work more meaningful to you? And even more importantly, how can you get better at understanding and engaging other people in the world where iPads and AI are coming for all the human jobs that don't need that interaction? So at NUS, I pioneered something called the Future Ready Index. It was our effort to understand what actually does future ready mean to employers. So we went off and we surveyed 300 plus employers, and we came up with a series of 9 constructs that really represented what employers thought future ready was. And I organized them into 3 buckets. The first bucket is self-awareness. The second bucket has to do with interpersonal awareness. And the third bucket has to do with awareness of the wider world, right? And really, if you notice the common thing, it's awareness. Because a real education to quote David Foster Wallace, has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with your awareness. How aware are you of your decisions, your thinking, the world? So let's quickly go through some of these skills and mindsets. The first one is curiosity, being really curious about the world outside. And research by Egon Zehnder actually shows that in terms of human potential, curiosity is like the #1 biggest predictor of how far you're going to go in life. And I really see a lot of curious faces in the audience. Guys, you all start off being curious. When we're born, we're all naturally curious. We poke at things, we prod at things, we ask questions, we do things. And then sometimes the school system kind of like, in a way, trains us not to be curious anymore because our schedules become so busy and we become so focused on outcomes. Why would I do that? I'll only learn that if that book is in my exam. If that's not in my exam, I don't want to learn. And really, curiosity is a very big predictor. If you're not curious in your life, you're going to miss out on thousands of different opportunities that you may not have even noticed because you weren't being curious. Secondly, self-awareness, insight. How insightful are you? And by insight, I mean not just thinking in narrow silos, but thinking, how do I connect the dots between this point A and that point Z, which don't appear to be connected at all, because the machines can do anything that can be coded. So it's for humans to do the creative stuff, the connecting the dots in a different way. And then resilience. How aware are you of your own resilience? Social resilience, your emotional resilience, your mental resilience, and also physical resilience. Are you sleeping enough? You know, most of my university students get 4.5 hours of sleep. It's insane. The research shows that you get 4.5 hours of sleep, you're actually damaging your brain. And you're better off using that time sleeping rather than studying, because that has a bigger impact to your results. So physical resilience also is super important. But before I go to the next point, resilience, I want to make an important point. In the National University of Singapore, one day when I was teaching, I'll never forget, a guy came up to me and he put up his hand and he was like really agitated and, you know, actually slightly distressed. And I said, yes, what's going on? And he said, you know, I'm really angry. I'm really angry at teachers and, you know, you guys, the authority figures. And I said, why? And he said, because you guys keep on telling us to be resilient. But if resilience is the ability to bounce back after failure, how do you expect us to be resilient if in the next breath you tell us you're not allowed to fail? And his point was that he told me in his entire life, his mother sat next to him, and while he studied, he wasn't allowed to make a mistake. He wasn't allowed to, you know, try things that he wasn't good at, because, you know, he should concentrate on the things that he wouldn't fail at. So his point was that, you know, how much does our society really tolerate and embrace failure, or is it just lip service? You know, people say, oh yeah, dare to fail, don't fear failure, but then at the end of the day, when you fail, you get piak, you know? So I think it's really, really important because resilience goes hand in hand with the ability to try different things, curiosity, and to bounce back when things inevitably don't work out, which is probably 90% of the time in the real world. Okay, then lastly, pursuing convictions. So how much can you stick to your deep convictions and go after the things that are meaningful to you? And then now we come to the second category, interpersonal awareness. And this is the first thing, emotional sensing. So it's very funny when I teach in NUS, the first question I ask my students is like, okay, let's do a quick weather check-in. Everybody go around, take the microphone, and then say one word that represents your emotions or your emotional weather. And then the first time I did it, I got cloudy, windy, stormy. I was like, no, let's try that again. I'm talking about one word that represents your emotions right now. So then, you know what the most common emotion in NUS students is? Have a guess. Sleepy, boredom. No, the most common emotion in NUS is nothing, which is not an emotion, right? And then the second most common emotion in NUS response I get is normal, and which again is not an emotion. And here's the thing, if you're really going to get good at connecting to other people, you need to have your sensors working. You need to be able to sense others' emotions, others' feelings, not just their thoughts. So when you go into your meeting room next time, you can sense, oh, this person's bored, excited, curious, frustrated, whatever. But you can't sense into others unless you get familiar with learning how to sense yourself. And if you've got kind of crappy sensors to the extent that you can't even distinguish what your own emotions are, there isn't a hope in hell that you can tell what other people are feeling. So it all starts with you, so practice that sort of awareness. And then we've got empathy. I'm sure all of you have heard a lot about empathy. Empathy is the ability to connect deeply with other people and to put yourself in their shoes and look at and connect to them, understanding their perspectives and their emotions. And it's really, really important because in a world where robots can do surgery, for instance, much more effectively than humans because their hands don't shake, the relevance of doctors will be how can they connect to other people? When you go and see a doctor, do you want to talk to a robot or do you want to go and talk to somebody who knows you and sees you as a person, knows your grandma, asks about your family, knows your history, or do you want a robot spitting out a diagnosis if it's bad news to you, right? So that's the quality of empathy. So lastly, in interpersonal awareness, I put adaptability. So because that in a way is the ability of being flexible, also flexible with other people. If somebody is a certain type of communicator, how can you actually adapt your style of communicating, for instance, with them so that they understand you? If somebody's a very analytical type, it's no point getting very emo with that person. You need to be able to talk facts, for instance, and vice versa, right? So lastly, VUCA World Awareness is two things. The first thing is your vision. Because in the world of the future, you need to have a very clear vision. Imagine you're a sailor and the seas are getting choppier and choppier, right? Because the VUCA world is making everything really competitive. So you need to be able to understand, what is my vision? What do I want? Because you're going to have to set your course and navigate to that. Because otherwise you're just going to be blown about by life. Wherever the waves want to take you, you go there. And in the end, you realize that actually you didn't end up where you wanted. And then lastly, entrepreneurial thinking is not a skill, it's a mindset. It's a combination of many different mindsets. But in general, it's an attitude that is the ability to spot an opportunity and to seize that opportunity. And it doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur. You could be a professor, you could be a teacher. But if you can spot a research opportunity, and wow, that's great, I better jump on that and capitalize on that, that's entrepreneurial thinking. So these are the 9 different qualities that employers are looking for that mean future ready to them. But the interesting thing is that when I was dealing with Roots and Wings, I actually found out that students weren't just interested in what employers wanted of them. Students were also interested in learning these skills and mindsets because of the stuff they were facing. We found out that they were facing a lot of anxiety about jobs. Your seniors in the university, they are petrified of whether they're going to be able to find a job. Their seniors are reporting from the war trenches, oh, I attended how many interviews, I didn't get blah, 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 this and that. There's a general sense of anxiety about what they're going to do when they grow up. Distractibility, with gadgets and with mobile phones. I have students that say to me that they have lost the ability to focus. And the biggest fear that my students say to me that they have in NUS is that I'm never going to be able to achieve what I want in life because I'm constantly distracted by other things, right? And the interesting thing is that your brains are myelinating right now. By myelinating, I mean they are developing. The human brain doesn't stop fully developing until you're 25, when the proteins are being laid down in your brain. Now, you are the first generation to have your brains myelinated while We have the internet, well, we have like all these distractions and WhatsApp and social media and everything. Because my generation, by the time all this stuff came along, our brains were already more or less set. But your brains are really plastic, and they are still developing. And as you know, with kids, when you show them a foreign language and they pick it up so fast, your brains are very, very susceptible right now to influence. And it's very interesting because all the things that we are seeing suggest that students are actually having their focus, attentions of their brain. The centers of their brain that are responsible for single pointed focus are being eroded. And the sections of their brain that are responsible for multitasking or rapid switching between this tab and that tab, those are lighting up more. Those are actually getting strengthened. So you are gradually being trained to have worse and worse attention, which is why you have to continually work on the skill of mindfulness or active noticing or training your attention on the present moment. Tech addiction is something I've talked about. This is something that university students struggle with a lot, especially girls, It seems that the research shows that social media impacts girls much more negatively than boys because girls are more prone to having their sense of self-worth defined by the relational, by relationships. How do I stand versus other people? Whereas with boys, it tends to be a little bit more, less relational and more goal-focused. Loneliness. I always get gobsmacked by the fact that, our students have never been more connected than before. Everyone seems to have 800 friends, 1,000 friends on Facebook, but they have never felt lonelier. I have lots of people that come to me and they say, I am so isolated. When I get into trouble, I have no one to call. I communicate with people on Facebook hundreds of times a day, but no one's there when I need them, right? So it's really, really important. And anxiety and depression. Now, my husband's a psychologist, and he works with a lot of students, because we are seeing a huge increase in students that are anxious and students that are depressed. And here's the interesting thing. Anxiety is correlated with your brain wanting to fixate on the future. What next? Oh no, what if this happens? What if that happens? A future sort of focus. Now depression is correlated with a past focus. Why did that happen? Why did he dump me? Why did I say that? Why did blah blah blah? Going over and over the things that have happened. That's depression. So how do you actually, what's the antidote? And the antidote to mental wellness as well as a happy and successful life is again your ability to control your attention so that you are in the present moment. Because all of your attention and all of your energy and power and resources are in the present moment. But if you're only 40%, 30% attention in the present moment, that's when you have a problem. Interestingly, a Microsoft study found out that human attention span has deteriorated from 15 seconds about 15 years ago. Now it's only about 7 seconds. That's pretty scary. It's gone down drastically. And what we're looking at is now humans with the attention span of a goldfish. It's like, oh, what did you say? What did you say? So this is another important skill. How do you train your brain so that you can focus, which is in roots and wings. We always started with focus and attention training or secular mindfulness. So I want to also talk a little bit about why skills aren't the answer, or skills alone aren't the answer. Because a lot of times I hear people ask me, what are the skills, what are the skills, what are the skills? And to me, skills are only the tip of the iceberg. And I even say this to the government, it's all about skills future and so forth. Now, skills, if you're somebody like me, right, and you hate Chinese, right, you got that kind of mindset, sure, you can be in Chinese class, and you can be taught the skill of learning the grammar, learning the idioms and all of that. It's not going to make a difference if you have a fixed mindset. Like, I'm just not the kind of person that's good at Chinese, or Chinese is hard. That's a mindset thing. No matter how much skills training you have, if you've got an unproductive mindset, it's not going to make a difference. And then lastly, underneath the surface of the iceberg, the biggest piece is actually identity. Because if your identity is I'm a loser, or I'm not good enough, or I'm a failure, identity will get you every time. So it's not just an issue of like what skills should I learn, what skills, because if you don't have the proper foundation, if you don't have great mindsets, if you don't have a healthy sense of identity, then no amount of skills training will ever make you a successful person. So let's talk a little bit, coming to the end of my speech soon, but let's talk a little bit about mindsets and what kind of mindsets are actually helpful. And by mindsets, I just mean an attitude. I mean a way of thinking, right? And mindsets are like your operating system. How are you going to approach anything and everything in life? So the first thing is mindfulness versus mindlessness. So mindfulness is about having a very clear intention in what you're doing and bringing your full attention to it that I've talked about, versus just like letting your attention go wherever your brain wants to jump about. Oh, Spotify now. Oh, WhatsApp now. Oh, Facebook now, or whatever it is, right? So having a clear intention. The second mindset is growth versus fixed mindset. And I've been hearing from Joseph that a lot of you know about growth mindset. Now, growth mindset is the ability is really the belief that if I put in effort in this, I will get better, and I can get better. Whereas fixed mindset is, I'm actually born like this, and there's nothing that I can do that will make me better at whatever it is. So it's also super important because, like, as you can see, we are neither a fixed mindset or a growth mindset person. We actually go up and down the scale between fixed and growth at any given point of the day with regard to different contexts. For example, with Chinese, I'm very fixed mindset. I'm not that kind of good at Chinese person. That's a fixed mindset. However, at parenting, I'm a very growth mindset. If I put in effort with my kids, I think I'm going to be a great parent, even though I may be having problems now, for instance. So with every subject, with every endeavor that we do, with every relationship, like with my mother, I'm kind of like a little bit more fixed mindset. That's mom, nothing I ever do, no effort I put in will ever change our relationship. Or with dad, it could be different, right? So with every aspect of life, you got to ask yourself, am I in fixed, am I in growth? And keep on monitoring that level of awareness. Third one I want to talk about is responsible versus victim. Now, victim language, and I'm not talking about actually being a victim like a car accident kind of victim. I'm talking about a victim mindset, which is when something happens, a victim uses victim language, which is like, I had no choice, they made me, it was like that, I was forced to blah, blah, blah. That's all victim language. But you can take the exact same situation and you can talk about it from a responsible mindset. So this thing happened, and this is what I chose to do about it. And actually the facts might be the same, right? So this teacher made an unfair decision on my paper, and here's what I chose to do about it, versus the victim mindset, which is, I was marked wrongly, there's nothing I could do, blah, 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 etc. But with everything in life, the responsible mindset is a much healthier mindset to have, because it gives you a sense of agency and power and choice, rather than the sense of victim, I have no choice. And then this abundance versus scarcity mindset is also really important. Scarcity mindset is when you think that, look, the world has got a limited amount of resources and I must grab everything for myself. I have students like hiding books in the library because they don't want other people to find out, the information. Or like they think, okay, it's me versus you, so I better not share information. Whereas the abundance mindset actually has that mindset that, look, there's plenty to go around, and actually by helping other people, it actually will generate good in my life as well. And it's interesting, the research suggests that if you help other people, and if you come from an abundance mindset, you're much more likely to be successful, because people gravitate towards people with an abundance mindset. Whereas people with a scarcity mindset, nobody likes them. they're seen as selfish and hoarding. So, in life, always try to help other people and do good. Lastly, I want to talk about global mindset. You might see this, graphic of the world. Now, the world is so huge, but if you look at this area over here in the highlighted circle, in that circle, it's called the Valerie Pieris circle. In that circle contains more than half of the world's population, despite the fact that most of the circle is sea. And Singapore is right there, somewhere in the heart of this circle. ASEAN is the world's 7th largest economy today. But by 2050, ASEAN will become the 4th largest economy in the world. And every forward-thinking Westerner that I meet wants to understand, how am I going to get into ASEAN? How am I going to penetrate the Vietnamese markets, Vietnam, Indonesia, etc., right? But it's very interesting when I speak to our local students, they feel that, innovation is somewhere in Silicon Valley. And ASEAN is like a group of countries who fly over on the way to Silicon Valley. And it's just all about Silicon Valley. Actually, the smart money is in our backyard. And I would really encourage all of you to have some exposure. My friend and ex-colleague, Dean Kishore Mahbubani, who was voted one of the Asia's top thinkers, and he's a diplomat, and he now lectures at Harvard. And he wanted at NUS to make it compulsory for every single NUS student to do one ASEAN project, some sort of ASEAN exposure, because that is going to be your generation's strategic advantage. If any of you can have some kind of familiarity with the ASEAN language, with ASEAN culture and all of this, this is going to be a big driver of the economy for the next 50 years or so. So really important to understand where are your opportunities around you, and always think global. Like, we act local, but in Singapore, we have to have a global mindset. We're too small to be parochial and just do what other Singaporeans do. Lastly, I want to talk about this, connecting with meaning. This is a photo of my husband holding 2 big fish. And this guy over here is Ang Jun Ting. He's the CEO of Haisia Seafood. Why am I showing you such a bizarre photo, you might ask? Now, millennials tell me all the time it's really important for them to connect with meaning in their jobs. They have to find their work meaningful if they're going to remain in the job and if it's going to be sustainable. And I think it's very interesting because I'm going to share a story about Jun Ting, who's a millennial, and what he did with his dad's company. So Haisia is his dad's company, and he inherited this seafood fish company. It's very unglamorous, right? I went to the Jurong fish port to see what they were doing, and there's a lot of uncles there that are gutting fish and everything. And he told me that when they first started, it was a big battle between him, a young 20-something-year-old, and all these 60, 70-year-olds, And he said to them, okay, all of you got to wear shower cap, all of you have to wear the white jacket, and they had been used for decades to cutting fish while smoking cigarette, topless in their boxer shorts, and it was a real uphill battle for him to connect to them. And then one day he decided he would try something different, because it was practically like mutiny on the bounty, right? So anyway, he decided, he called up this restaurant, I think it was Imperial Treasure. It's a very fancy restaurant in Paragon. And he spoke to the owner, and because Haisia Seafood distributes seafood to all these, upmarket restaurants. And he said, would it be okay if we came around? I brought a whole table of my manual laborers, my workers, and they got a chance to experience where the fish actually ends up in the restaurant. And the owner of the restaurant said, sure. So he rounded up all his uncles, and he told them to put those on. And he then brought them to the restaurant, and there they were. And they were sitting and enjoying this sumptuous food that they never had the opportunity to go to such a type of restaurant like this before in their lives, right? And what he noticed was very interesting. Twofold. Firstly, because they could connect, the workers could connect what they did, the gutting of the fish, with actually meaning of this is where it ends up, this is the impact that it makes, this is how beautiful it looks when it's done properly, that he realized that they became a lot more conscientious about the job. And the other benefit was that the customers that used to call up, pick up the phone and yell at his staff about the orders and everything, they actually didn't yell anymore because they could put a face to the people who were doing the job now. So both ways, they were able to connect and collaborate better because they had that human ability, that empathy. And it was a really good example of Junxiang having that growth mindset, that belief that yes, if I keep on persevering, these guys, even though they're old, they can get better. It was a great example of empathy, being able to empathize, getting those guys to empathize why were they so frustrated, putting himself in their shoes, and also for the client to experience empathy. It's really not easy to be that person gutting fish all day, in the factory. And also it's the ability to connect the dots and be creative about new solutions, right? And I think millennials actually are so creative, and they are focused on values, and they're focused on meaning, and they come up with amazing solutions if only they believe in themselves and give themselves the permission to think of creative solutions and dream big. So lastly, you can't do this by yourself. It's unreasonable for us as educators to say, you, all of you need to be future ready. The fact is, when I was at NUS, the first thing I said to my provost was, I shouldn't be running Center for Future Ready graduates. I should be running Center for Future Ready faculty. Because how can the graduates be at 4.0 if the faculty is at 2.0 or 1.0? So it's a whole system effort. We have to change educators' mindsets as well, and the government, and I'm sure many of the good people at Zenix are working on this. But sometimes it's not easy to change the older generation. You have parents, for sure, you have relatives that will tell you, don't worry about this, waste of time, whatever, because they have those mindsets. They don't understand, they don't have the benefit of this education that you guys have. So you have to learn how to ignore bad advice from parents, from well-meaning, relatives that tell you don't, just do what society expects of you, blah, blah, blah. Because here's the thing, if you only remember one thing from this talk, remember that in the future of AI, in the future of robotics, anything that can be coded, that has rules, that has structure, that has process, it will be coded. And that means the only relevance for you as a human being in the workforce is in the stuff the machines can't do. And grades, I'm sorry to say this in a school context, but grades are not really correlated with success. The research points that grades are more correlated with discipline, and grades are more correlated with compliance. And in the world of the future, who's going to be better at compliance? Is it going to be you or a robot? It's obviously going to be the robot. So if your whole focus in life is give me the system, let me think like a robot, let me follow the rules, I got news for you, you guys are all going to be out of jobs. So you really have to focus on the core humanistic abilities. How do you deal with ambiguity? When things don't have a set solution or path or whatever problem format, how are you actually going to think and be aware of yourself and others and the situation so that you can actually make a difference and bring your humanity to this? And if you do this well, the future of the whole planet, not to sound grandiose, but really the future of this planet depends on the consciousness of you. It depends on the consciousness of our youth. So I really want to encourage all of you to keep on being inspired by the world, keep on being curious, keep on learning and daring to try different things, and learning also like how do you deal with failure? How do you embrace that as part of the human experience and normalize it, right? Because in your life, you're going to face a lot of failure and adversity in front of you. That's just part of the human experience. If we don't get here, none of us who are going to be sitting on stage today get there because everything we did turned out right. Most of us end up sitting here because we tried a lot of things. 99% of them were terrible, and we learned a lot of great things from them, and then the last thing we did was successful, and that's why we're here. So thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been a real pleasure.